Hey guys, it's Adam from Pixel, and today it's my pleasure to bring you a follow-up video to my Wacom MovinkPad Pro 14 I purchased myself, not sponsored. I did a review of it last week, sharing my thoughts, and I did a full comparison between this and my M4 13-inch iPad Pro with nano texture, which I find is a very fair side-by-side comparison for digital artists, okay? And note that whatever reviews I'm sharing with you are strictly from the perspective of a digital painter. So if you want to see what kind of artwork that I do working digitally, you can check out any of the videos on my channel, okay? Lots of that stuff. What I'm going to do with you today as a follow-up is share with you some of the accessories, alternatives to the accessories, and my settings using my TourBox Elite Plus. Non-sponsored, this is mine, okay? Because this is a product that a lot of artists love to use. This is my daily needed all the time device. I use it all the time, so I promote the crap out of this thing. If you want a version of a TourBox that works not only with desktop, but also with a tablet, like an iPad or an Android tablet, like the Wacom Movink, you need the Elite Plus version. Okay, not the standard Elite. The standard Elite, like this one over here, this is desktop only. So this won't work with a tablet. If you're looking to get a desktop only version, note that there's several different versions of it that come at different price brackets because these things aren't cheap, albeit well built, work amazingly well, and I love them to death. So I have no problem promoting it. I'm going to take you through all of my settings, how I work in Clip Studio Paint, because I'm using Clip Studio Paint on this. And yeah. So we're going to start with the tablet itself, 14-inch tablet, nice and light, 16 by 10 aspect ratio. And the first accessory that you can get is this cover. Note that this is just a cover, and it doesn't cover the back at all. It's just there to protect it from scratches, and it's got a little sleeve in here that you can put your Pro Pen 3 in. Notice a little side note is that I'm testing this out with a grip that I stole from my Cintiq over here because it uses the same pen. If you add a grip to it, you can still attach it, albeit you have to do it from the back, so it's a little trickier to slip it in because you're not doing it from the tip, you're doing it from the back. And you can slip it in like that. It's gripping it from the back of the pen. It's perfectly fine because it's just a place to store your pen, but you can't slip it all the way through the way you would normally if you didn't have the grip attached. Notice well that the grip is optional and it's sold separately, okay? And when you're buying this, if you do buy this separately, I'm looking to see if they sell the grip separately with the additional raised buttons, because these buttons have to be replaced when you change the grip. But for some reason, I can't seem to find the button replacements, which is kind of weird because otherwise you can't buy it. But I digress. The cover itself, I generally just, when I'm setting myself up, I just pop it off. I grab my pen and I put this down somewhere, albeit you can flip it to the back if you need to. So you just use it as a back thing. Do note that this is nicely made. It's made of a nice fabric. However, it is prone to stains if you're not careful when you put it down. And the first day I got it, I put it down on my kitchen table and I got this tiny little stain over here. And I was like, oh crap, because it's made of this light kind of felt material. It's not dark. And just note that, try to put it somewhere clean and don't just put it down on any surface because you could get it stained. And and the inside is nice and felt, and I can confirm that my cats like sleeping on this thing because they try every chance they get. Okay. Next, you can get an optional stand. Now the stand is not cheap. It's very nicely built. Okay. It's a very clever, very simple design where you just you open it up like a laundry rack essentially. And it's made of a nice machined aluminum, really nice quality. It's got a little bit of Wacom branding on it, nice and tastefully done. And it gives you a slight angle like this. Okay, so I can hold it at a slight angle. For me, it's perfectly fine because I'm generally looking down at my device. I don't need it in front of me. But depending on your particular setup, you might not find that angle sufficient. So if that's the case, this might not be the best stand for you. I might recommend an alternative that's a lot less expensive. This one from Parblo. Again, none of what I'm sharing with you is sponsored. All of this stuff is my own stuff. But this one's really, really cheap. You can get it on Amazon. It's really well built, and it gives you full range of adjustment, just like Huyan's ST100 stand. It's a very straightforward type of stand, okay? And I've used all kinds of devices with this thing. It's very reliable, okay? So this will give you a full range from vertical to flat if you prefer more, albeit at the cost of a bit of weight. So if you need something portable, another option would be this one over here from Astropad, but it's somewhat similar in design, albeit you have access to a few more adjustable ranges here, like that. You can see I can set it to different things. It opens up and pretty much serves a very similar function. And this stand is considerably less expensive, even though it's made of nice solid metal. It's really, really good. The other thing that you can do right off the bat with this is if you're using this stand, it's just as stable as the Wacom one, okay? However, because the stand only widens out to this width, it also perfectly fits portrait orientation as well, and it's nice and stable. Unless I'm shoving the thing around, it should hold nice, and it's nice and rubberized. You can do that with the Wacom one. However, it's a little bit of a fiddle. Well, not really. It's just that if you're doing this with the Wacom stand, by default, I can't do that because the width of it is very wide. So you can see it doesn't fit these little rubberized legs. So what you do is you just squish it down a little bit and you fit it like that. And there you go. And I do find that as far as the angle is concerned, the AstroPad does give me a little bit more of an elevated, slightly more elevated angle. This feels a little sloped to me, but it's like this in a pinch. I only use it in portrait orientation when I've got it on my lap because it fits perfectly. It sits nice and flat on my knee. And it's actually quite nice drawing portrait with this. I like it a lot. For today's demo, however, I'm not going to use this just so we can get a better top-down angle so I can take you through all of my settings. So I'll put this aside. And we're going to be note that you're going to see me using this with the Pro Pen 3 with grip, but the grip is not included. The other thing to note is, if you open this up, it's a different version of the Pro Pen that has a non-removable nib holder in there, okay? Meaning, I can't, if I want to, I can add a grip. As you can see, I add the rubberized grip, but because it's got a filled-in interior, I can't add that optional weight that you can get with the Cintiq Pro. Even with the, when I was using the Wacom Cintiq 24 non-Pro version, which is a really great device as well, one of my highly recommended ones, you get a version of the Pro Pen 3 that does allow you to add a weight, but it doesn't come with the weight, so you'd have to buy that extra. After that, I'm just going to walk you through settings, and I'm not going to take you through all of my Clip Studio Paint settings, because that's subjective. That depends on your personal style and everything like that. The setup that I have here is aimed to mimic my workflow in Photoshop as much as possible. And if you want a little brush tip, because on an Android tablet, you don't have global access to pen pressure settings like you would in Wacom Center working on a desktop, I found that working in my subtool brush density or brush opacity helped to compensate for the brush curve if it felt like my brush was a bit too sensitive or not sensitive enough. And you'll see how I've accommodated that brush setting with my TourBox over here. Future Adam here. I've put another 25 hours of drawing on this thing, working on this exclusively. If there's any indication of how much I love drawing on this, I've learned a couple of really, really awesome things, and a huge shout out to this YouTuber for teaching me a few of these things in her Wacom Moving 11 video and her Wacom Moving 14 video. Really, really awesome stuff. Go send her a subscribe and some love because her videos are absolutely top tier. So the first thing is pen pressure settings. I didn't know you had access to pen pressure settings when I was actually making this video. You can directly in Clip. In fact, if I can give you a little quick opinion, if you really want to get the most out of this tablet, I think Clip Studio Paint's where it's at. This is a full professional, stable desktop experience, in my opinion, and you get access to all the features you'll ever need for doing this kind of artwork that I'm doing right over here. Okay, so pen pressure settings. You click on your Clip Studio Paint menu, which is the very, very, very top left, just to the left of File. It's the Clip Studio Paint logo. And then you're going to go way down to the bottom over here and you're going to go Pen Pressure Settings. Now, you have two ways of doing it, automatically or manually. If I just start drawing, freehand drawing, you can see how the curve is updating itself automatically. Okay. However, I didn't feel it was quite what I was looking for. So you can just go in and manually adjust this to get a curve the way you want it to, like that. Once you've dialed it in, you click Check Adjusted Settings. You can tweak it even further by spamming the lighter or stronger button, and then you click Done. I'm not going to, but that's how you do it. You might have to go back and forth a few times to get it the way you want, but there you go. So in order for me to control my opacity and my pen pressure, it's been a combination of those pen pressure settings plus playing with the opacity slider, which, as I mentioned on my TourBox Elite Plus, I set to this button over here. This is the TourBox Elite. This is not the Plus, but my Plus is upstairs. So that's how you do that. Second, command bar. That's the bar up on the top where you get all these buttons. Infinite Painter has this feature as well, and Photoshop doesn't. This is really awesome. So same menu. In fact, explore this menu in general. There's a lot of awesome stuff here. So you clip menu up on the top left, and then you're going to scroll down to command bar settings. Then you're going to go to whatever sub menu you want, like this, and you go here and you look for something and you go, okay, hue, saturation, luminosity. Let's say that adjustment layer, and click add just underneath the close button. And it's going to add a nifty little button over here. And you can keep doing that. You can remove or add whatever you want. And then you close it when you're done. I have my adjustment layers over here, like levels and hue, saturation, and all that kind of stuff. Flip canvas horizontal, straight line tool, transform tools. I replaced save as with save as, for instance. Whatever you need. Fill, paint bucket tool, clear. Some of those are default. But I really recommend you explore this command bar up here, because it can, basically the way I've been working all week is I've left my keyboard alone. I just grab my TourBox and my tablet or keyboard if you need it, and that's it. And you have access to pretty much everything you need there. And the very odd time I need to access a keyboard, I just, use the on-screen keyboard. But honestly, I didn't need it at all. Next important thing is sharing back and forth between different platforms. I work on a Mac desktop, but this is an Android tablet. So obviously I don't have access to iCloud, at least not the way it works Apple to Apple device. I've experimented with several different cloud sharing services, and I find the one that really is the most cross compatible is not Dropbox. It's actually Google Drive. It tends to be a lot more cross compatible, but the thing that makes Google Drive a little bit better if you're working on a Mac desktop is that it integrates itself perfectly into the file system on a Mac as an extra drive, it gives you direct access through the operating system itself, where Dropbox doesn't. It's like you install it, but then you have to go and find the application app and double click it, and it just opens it up at like a folder. It's kind of weird. So Google Drive has been a lot better. In fact, Google as a cross-platform system is really, really awesome, because there's certain apps, for instance, on Android that you can't get, that you might get on an iPad or a Windows desktop or an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever. You can't get access to that stuff. So Google apps like Google Tasks, Google Photos, Google Drive tends to work really, really well. So the way you would do this if you're working on this tablet and you want to save it to your desktop is I set a shortcut here for Save As. So I click Save As. And then you're going to, with this dialog box, you're going to make sure that you click on the drop down here to type, and you're going to go way to the bottom and you're going to click Photoshop Document, PSD. Clip Studio Paint files don't read in Photoshop, so it needs to be a PSD, a Photoshop document. Give it a name, click OK. And once you click OK, it's going to open this other dialog box to save it onto your device's memory directly. And then you click on Save and it'll save it. Once that's done, okay, you're going to go into, like that, you're going to go into your Files Manager directly on, you're going to go on your Files Manager. Once you're in there, it's going to update to here. You want to avoid any files that say clip on it, because those are not the ones you want. Let's say this one, for instance, I press and hold on that. The reason we're not getting a preview is because it's not a JPEG. Only JPEGs give you a preview on an Android tablet. So you click and hold, you can grab whichever ones you want. And then you're going to click the share button. Up here, it looks kind of like a zoop. It's like kind of like a V shape, like that, a sideways V. You click on that, and you can go through here and you can select whichever platform you want. In my particular case, Google Drive. And if you used a certain directory in Google Drive recently, it's always going to be the ones at top, which is very convenient. You don't actually have to swipe up. It'll just show up right there. You click on that. Let's say artwork. But if you don't, here, you're going to go location, you click on location, you find the drive, let's say here, you can create a folder to wherever you want, and then you're going to save it. And then you can go onto your desktop, open it in Photoshop, and continue where you left off. Back to the video here. Okay. Now, when working on a desktop, if I put the Elite Plus aside and we just look at my Elite. So my settings on my regular desktop TourBox, you need to know that before you know how I switched it out to supplement for my tablet version. Zooming in and out, just the regular zoom in and out. Rotating screen. These are actually the defaults, I believe. Brush size is on the dial. I use this big button on the top to zoom in and zoom out. This is for my zoom tool, so Z, just for holding and zooming in freely. The hand tool for panning, essentially. Then I have the buttons over here. So the top button is my Control plus. My bottom button is Control minus, which is either A, zooming in by increments, or if I'm in windowed mode, it allows me to increase or decrease my canvas size while zooming in. And I use that all the time for resizing my canvas and moving it over to the side for references. So I use that for my Control plus, Control minus. My left button is eraser, and my right button over here is brush. Okay. If I double click the top button, this creates a new canvas for the same thing, because I like to create a second canvas and stick it up on my Apple Studio display just so I have one in front of me next to my references when I'm doing that. So I like to use that for that. Then undo, redo, standard. And these last two buttons over here, this one over here and this little button that I have over here, I have this set to record screen because I use a thing called Clean Shot X. So when I click this button here on the side, it starts a recording. I select the area of the screen, I hit record, and then this little button next to my dial, I used to play and pause my recording, because if I want to go and grab a drink or whatever, I can always pause my recording while I'm doing screen recording for my time-lapse videos. Oh yeah, and if I click this middle button, this switches between screen modes, full screen or windowed mode. Cool? So that's how I use this. Now, on my TourBox Elite Plus, because this is for a tablet, I have access to functions that I don't have on a desktop, and that is touch functions. And the two primary touch function differences would be rotating and zooming. Okay. Now in my particular case, when I'm drawing, I actually do like to use the rotation tool when I'm drawing, because that way I don't have to take my hand up, rotate it around, draw, rotate, draw. I can just kind of draw, draw, draw. It kind of saves you that extra click, that extra action, which I find really, really just speeds things up for me. After that, a lot of these buttons are very, very similar with a few odd exceptions. This one, for instance, controls, if you look over here on the right side of my thing here, I'll zoom in a bit so you can see it. Okay. If you look over here, I have my opacity and brush size slider. So this one, this rotation dial controls my opacity slider. And that's what I use to compensate for brush pressure, because I can't manually adjust that on the tablet. Okay. So this is just for brush pressure like this. This button is flip canvas horizontally. Brush size, as usual. So you can see I can adjust my brush size, and the responsiveness is just as fast. Brush, eraser. This is the top button. I didn't even set my topper button here. So there, I have two extra buttons. I might actually set these to different brush functions as far as that goes. This one over here is panning and zooming. So it's a bit redundant, but I like to have those features. I have that muscle memory as well. And this button on the side, I haven't even set it yet. So the only real main function that I've swapped out is the opacity slider. The other thing too is I have to find new functions for these two buttons, because when I'm doing screen recording, I'm not using Clean Shot X, so I can't play and pause and start a recording using a button. So this is something I just do through the Android tablet interface. Lastly are pen settings. And I want to thank this YouTuber over here, who is the only one who actually who is doing a review of the Wacom MovinkPad 11. She did the 14 as well, but in her 11 one, she showed how you can go into clip and change your pen settings. So the way to do that, okay, is to click on the Clip Studio Paint button over on the top left, and you go into Modifier Key Settings, and then you're going to click over here on Pen Gesture. And you can, in Clip, you can actually set all three buttons to something different. And what's really, really cool is Clip Studio Paint comes pre-installed on the Wacom MovinkPad Pro 14, as well as a 1-year subscription to Clip, which is pretty cool. So you get a 1 free year of subscription to Clip Studio Paint, and it's already a super inexpensive app, so I'm super happy with that. So you click, you make sure you check off pen gesture, and then you can set your 3 buttons to whatever you want. So in my particular case, normally I would use this first button in Photoshop as the right click option to open and close my brush panel, because I just quick brush settings that way. I can switch brushes quickly. The middle mouse button is always set to color picker, to the eyedropper tool. And this top one I have set to the move tool because in Clip Studio Paint, I don't know Clip as well as I know Photoshop, but finding the move tool was a bit unintuitive. So what I've swapped out is this first button here, I've set it to blend, which is a tool, which is a feature I don't use all the time, but I've actually been messing around with it. So I'm currently have the set to blend, and this one I set to the move tool, and the middle one is just eyedropper. There you go. So you hit OK. Once you set all three of these to the ones you want, you hit OK. And now I can, if I'm drawing something, I can do my drawing and then I can blend using that first button. And if I need to move around, I can move it like that. See? And but to me, honestly, the main button I need is eyedropper. And note that you can customize this directly in Clip Studio Paint. Lastly, if you go into your preferences and you go into cursor, I recommend changing your cursor to brush shape if you want it to work like Photoshop. You don't want it to be a static brush shape that's always circular or doesn't scale with your brush size. You want to be able to tell what brush you're using and the orientation and the tilt of that brush and the size of that brush. So you want to change the brush cursor type to brush size, to brush shape. And that's my personal preference. With that said, if there's something that I haven't covered in today's video, let me know in the comments below and I'll try to do a follow-up video if I can. And otherwise, happy painting, everybody. Take care.